it was been shown in one registry that 20% of patients for primary PCI, the non-culprit lesion tends to be a CTO. Now that's quite a lot of, but I mean, lot of percentage, big percentage. And in BARI substudy, BARI we know is CABG versus OMT substudy. In that, the predicted, I mean, the CTO's presence was an independent predictor of patients being pushed for CABG. That was actually an important finding. So today we will see why there is so much of a hesitancy in revascularizing a CTO, and also what are the various techniques and hardware used. So definition, by definition, CTO is an obstruction of a coronary artery disease with no luminal continuity. So this no luminal continuity is important, and previously they had included TIMI 0 or TIMI 1 flows, but currently the definition says only TIMI 0 flow, which means no flow, and duration of occlusion from the time of an estimated index event more than 30 days. So that is the definition of CTO for us. And so the anatomy of CTO. So CTO is basically revolving around something called as an intimal plaque. So the intimal plaque concept is that we all know that usually the plaque in atherosclerosis is subintimal. But however, in CTO, because the plaque itself engulfs the intima and it's the whole of the lumen, so it is called as an intimal plaque. And as we can see here, inside the segment of CTO, there is a intimal plaque followed by media and subintima, which is dissectable and expandable, as we will see. And with proximal and distal to it, the segment will be like this, where there is a true lumen, intimal plaque followed by media, and this thing. So this is just another picture which shows the same thing.
Oh, that 3 months they were telling, no, that is gone now. 3 months of total occlusion. You told it as 30 days. You told.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I think I wrote wrong here. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
It is 3 months. 3 months.
I thought whether it is changed.
No. It's my mistake.
Even I thought of asking.
No, you're sure it is 30 days? 30 days or 3 months?
3 months. 3 months it is.
Because I remember reading in CTO only one favorable thing is if the duration is less than 3 months.
Yeah, it's less than 3 months is a favorable thing, but it is, the definition is 3 months.
But then it doesn't become CTO, no? Then they would have not called it CTO. Then they would have not put it under CTO.
No, I didn't understand. What? No, it's nothing like that. So recent occlusion is a favorable factor. Don't confuse. It is 3 months. Just remember it like that. It's my mistake. I'll correct that before putting it. Okay. Going to evolution of CTO and pathophysiology, I'll focus on the first picture here. So the coronary artery first occludes with the fresh thrombus, as we can see here in picture A, and then the thrombus matures and then forms a fibrous plaque, and the fibrous plaque then invokes calcium. And as we can see here, once the completion of occlusion happens, then this tapering into the lesion thing which is there, it slowly starts to fill up. And once it is completely filled up, and then if there happens to be especially a side branch which can take away the blood, which can redirect the blood away from the site of the CTO, then quickly enough there is a formation of complete total occlusion with a proximal cap and a distal cap with the body of the CTO, as we can see here. So a tapering lesion would suggest formation an earlier in evolution lesion than a fibrous completely blunt stump of a cap, the importance of which we will see. And this is again another picture schema which shows that as soon as there is an occlusion, initially there is a positive remodeling of the vessel, as we can see here, positive remodeling after an occlusion, which is followed later by a fibrous and a calcific accumulation of substance. And after the fibrous calcification happens and the redirection of blood happens in a more emphatic way, then there is a negative remodeling. So more or less they say that synquinone on CT for a CTO which is quite old, far beyond 30 days would be a negative remodeling is what they say. So when you have a negative remodeling, it is a definite occlusion beyond the 3 months.
How do we know it's negative remodeling?
Here we can see, compared to the distal and proximal,
It is like you are explaining, I understood. But you said that synquinone is negative.
CT, I said.
CT, you can be sure that this is a negative remodeling.
No, see, basically, if the occluded segment has outer external diameter lesser than the normal segment, that is negative remodeling. So that we can see in CT. No.
Okay. So okay, that means the occluded segment diameter is less than the healthy segment.
Yeah. External elastic laminar diameter to the external elastic laminar diameter of the healthy segment. So that is how you.
That is one of the advantages of a CT, right? To
CT.
look
Yeah,
at
that is
negative
how
and
you.
positive. That's the only way, in fact, you can look at it.
Okay,
So,
okay.
like if you had a lumen, you could look at through IVUS also, but because this is an occlusion, CT is the only way, actually.
Conventional angio we can't make out. It will be total.
Yeah,
You can put an IVUS catheter on the side branch if it is close to look at the main vessel remodeling you want.
No, but that's mainly for entry, Varun. You can't see the remodeling. I'll come to that.
Yeah.
So the recommendations, where do we stand with the percutaneous intervention of CTOs? AHA doesn't specifically mention anything, and it says in one of the recent documents, expert consensus documents, that when anatomy is feasible and adequate expertise is available, it is a two-way indication to revascularize. And ESC in this 2018 revascularization guidelines has mentioned that if there is angina and which is resistant to medical therapy, and there is a large area of documented ischemia, then one could attempt a revascularization of a CTO vessel. So now that we know that CTO intervention, so we will first deal with what is necessary for the CTO intervention. So the CTO intervention we'll be discussing in what is necessary before the CTO actually intervention takes place, which is a interpretation of the coronary angiogram and intervention, and also the complications of the CTO intervention. So interpreting a CAG before CTO intervention. So
sorry to interrupt. This thing in this indication they mention that patient should be symptomatic with a large area of ischemia. Then only as a two-way indication for revascularization, right?
Yeah, it's mentioned here. No, it's written here, right?
Correct. No, I just wanted to know, like, if at all the patient is asymptomatic, but there is a definitely large area of ischemia, or you are doing a patient has stable CAD, you are doing a TMT. There is a
we can consider doing Gaurav for that.
Okay.
That is if it is more than 10% based on the non-invasive imaging, if it is viable, I mean, if either it's a viable territory, and if there is more than 10% ischemia, even if it is asymptomatic, we can consider.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So coming to interpretation of CAG, from here on, there'll be a lot of terminology which I'll be explaining about. So I just want you guys to pay attention to this. So what do we look at in an angiogram before intervening in a CTO? CTO, the first and foremost rule of CTO is that it should never be done on an ad hoc basis. Time should be taken out to interpret the angiogram. So the first thing which we look at is the proximal cap of CTO. And in the proximal cap, we see if there is a tapered or an abrupt end to the abrupt blunt proximal cap. So here we can see these are the two types of cap which I have mentioned. So here we can see, we would have all seen these kind of angiograms, where here we can see a beak into the CTO segment, and here it is a blunt cutoff. So that kind of detail should be paid attention to, and also the vascular bending in CTO segment. When I talk about the scores, we will come to this. So when there is a vascular bend in the CTO segment, then it has a difficult, it is a difficult to do CTO, and it has a worse outcomes because it has a very high chance of perforation once you negotiate into the body of the CTO. And also one should look at a CTO lesion calcification. This can be better looked at in a CT rather than a conventional angiogram. And the distal end, the distal cap, like I mentioned also, that the cap, like in this picture I mentioned, the distal cap also forms. So the shape of the distal cap can be tapered, as we can see here. It is usually tapered if it is easily negotiable, but once it has become hard and fibrous, it becomes flat or convex shape in this case, and it is usually thick and fibrous, and then we require different hardware to puncture that, which we will come to. And also one should make any note of any contrast islands. So the contrast islands, as we can see here, like this is an CTO of an LAD. As we can see here, we can see a contrast island here. They say that if there are contrast islands, then the tissue in between, so we should only take care of the, the antegrade technique can be successful in more than 90% of the times if there are any contrast islands seen. So one should make a very astute observation of whether there are any of such. So just a schema as to what we need to look at in the angiogram. Proximal cap, 4 things: proximal cap, lesion length and course. This I will come to in the retrograde injection. And how is the distal vessel and collateral. So this 3 things we will be able to see only once we do a dual injection. So we'll be only able to see the proximal segment in the anterograde injection. And once we do a dual injection, we'll be able to see these details: collaterals, distal vessel, and also the lesion length, course, and composition. So collaterals are very important part of CTO. So
dual injections means 2 vessels CAG at same time, or we should.
Yeah. I'm coming to that one. I'm coming to that. Hello.
Okay.
So collateral flow. Baroldi was the first person who has actually looked at the collaterals in the coronary tree. So the normal coronary tree itself has innumerable number of collaterals, which are usually in the size of 20 to 350 microns. So Baroldi was the first one to classify this based on where they connect from where to where. So homo collaterals collect, as we all know, homo and hetero collaterals. Homo connect from the same artery and hetero from the different artery to supply the distal bed. So we all are familiar with this Rentorp classification. So point to be noted here is that Rentorp classification is both for occluded and non-occluded vessels. So which is why we use it in our day-to-day practice, where we also deal with non-CTO cases. And 0, 1, 2, 3, I'm not going to details of that, but what needs to be paid attention to is Werner collateral classification. This is, Werner has mainly looked at it in the form of trying to intervene with the use of collaterals, and it is only a CTO only collateral classification, where he has initially classified them into CC 0, 1, 2. 3 was later on added. It was not there in his original description. So where it means that 0 stands for no connection, CC 1 stands for a thread-like connection, and CC 2 is a side branch-like connection which is more than 0.4 mm, and CC 3 is more than 1 mm diameter of a direct connection. So this is basically, this has a significant difference in the terms of a success to actually access these. And they say that CC2 and CC3 are the vessels where you will be able to attempt a retrograde, and we cannot attempt it in CC0, 1, or some cases of CC2 also, if it is tortuous, we will see that. So coming to bread and butter of CTO in current day and age, which is simultaneous bilateral angiographic injection. So the goal of this is to clarify the anatomical relation of the CTO at its occlusion and the status of the distal vessel. So a few things which need to be followed are that there should not be any magnification, and donor artery, which is the feeder for the collaterals, should be injected first, and the CTO vessel 1 to 2 seconds later after the donor artery starts filling up the CTO, and no panning should be used, and cine should be done till all the contrast disappears. So more or less you will get a picture like this, where as we can see here, there is no mag which is used. Most of the times they use an AP view, and you should not pan, because they say that this has to be a working channel view. So you should not pan and identify the collaterals first. And then if you want to do a selective collateral angiogram, then we can actually go for a oblique views. But first, dual injection should not be with any magnification or any tilt. So moving on to what is an optimal collateral channel. This picture tells us that, so there are a few characteristics of what an optimal collateral should be for a good retrograde successful CTO procedure. So the donor site, it should have almost an acute. So I mean, it's common sense. So like because we come like this and enter this way. So if there is a acute angulation this way, it will be difficult to enter. So it should have an oblique, obtuse angle here and also here. So it should be able to easily enter the channel, and it should not have tortuosities. And then when it is going into the recipient vessel, it should again have an obtuse angle to be able to enter it easily. So the site, no tortuosity, no bifurcation, and a good size and a clear connection. These are the optimal collateral channels. So some names with these collaterals are, one thing is called as shifting collaterals. So predominant collaterals which tend to change over time. They have seen that if more than 2 months has elapsed from the initial time of angiogram, dominant collateral may change amongst the collaterals which is there. So we should always check before we plan. So also we should be ready for a change in the collateral anatomy at the if the significant time has elapsed before we perform the procedure and the index angiogram was done. So previous angiogram review is very important in view of this shifting collaterals. And it is general thing that septal collaterals, which are from anterior to, anterior circulation to the posterior circulation, are easier to cross than the epicardial collaterals. We will come to the details. So two named collaterals, one would be fancy to know. It's not of any importance with respect to CTO intervention per se, except Kuegel's artery is to be avoided. So Kuegel's is a collateral which connects the circumflex artery, which is usually, so the anterior system with posterior system, to be precise. So the posterior system, and it usually connects at the level of crux of the heart. And this connection may also have a connection with the AV nodal artery and supply the AV node. So which is why this artery should be avoided, even though it is a septal collateral. And this is present in almost 70% of the hearts. And other named collateral, which is of no importance to CTO, is a Vesuvius ring. So which is an RCA to LAD collateral, usually via the coronal artery, just for our knowledge there, sir. So there is something called as a J channel score, so which is essentially telling us how easy or how difficult it would be to cross the collaterals. This basically talks about what I have just mentioned, that if there is a small collateral, you give 1 point. And here it says, depending on septal and non-septal, the scoring differs. And if there is a reverse bend, like we have seen, that it would complicate the case. And also there is a tortuosity and a corkscrew type, where they have mentioned that continuous bends with an A/D ratio less than 2. So remember that if anatomically difficult, then you get a higher score. And then they say that easy is 0, and intermediate easy would be an optimal collateral channel. Intermediate is 1 to 2, and difficult, the retrograde approach should not be attempted. So I know this is a busy paper. So CTO is all about scoring. I'll tell you what is the importance of this scoring. So scoring is basically to help us be able to look at the angiogram more technically, and also more intentfully, in order to not miss specific details. So the initial first scoring which has actually come into vogue is JCTO score, otherwise Japanese CTO score, because they are the pioneers in CTO work, where they say each point is given to these 5 items. We will sum it up with a Venn diagram in the end. So I want you to focus on this, that JCTO has these components. There are a lot of overlap between these scores, so it will be easy to remember. So tapered proximal cap, calcification presence, bending angle at the CTO. That is why I've mentioned that CTO, in the CTO segment, if there is a bend angle like this, the wire would not negotiate this way and rather perforate and go out. So which is why presence of it would give a score of 1. And occlusion length, if its occlusion length is more than 20 mm, then you give 1 point. And if it's a retry of a previously attempted CTO, you get 1 point. So based on this, it is defined as easy, intermediate, difficult, and very difficult. It is based on how
bending this thing. I didn't get. How is the angle? Bending.
Basic. Yeah. See, if the CTO, let's say, if this is the vessel and this is the CTO segment. So when you're crossing it, it will be difficult for us to cross like this into the bend if you have a bend more than 45 degrees. So the wire has a higher chance of perforation, which, like, if you push it or torque it, because there is no channel here to take this chance, it has a higher route along the tangent. So the complications are higher. So if there is a bend, this bend which is there more than, like, if you take an angle between this, if this angle is more than 45 degrees of a bend, then it has a worse outcomes than if it doesn't, than if it is a straight channel. You understood?
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. So these 5 things are there in JCTO score. Then came along a progress CTO score. See, the JCTO score looked at outcome of successful wire crossing at 30 minutes. That is what they had looked at. But Euro CTO, and which is also called as a CASL score, and a progress CTO score looked at technical success, like the whole technique, completion of the procedure. So this would be more relevant to us. But however, that said and done, most commonly used score is JCTO score. So the progress CTO score looks at 4 items, which is a proximal cap ambiguity. Ambiguity in the sense if the cap is not visualized well, or if there is an absence of clearly tapered cap and a stump, a clearly tapered stump, then it would configure a 1 point. And if there are no collaterals, then a 1 point is given. And if there is a tortuosity with bends defined as this more than 2 bends of 70 degrees or 1 bend of 90 degrees itself, it's 1 point. And they are found in a lot of registries that CTO, circumflex CTO has a very high risk of technical failure because of the angulation and also absence of support. So CTO itself, attempting a CTO itself confers 1 point. And as we can see here, with the increase in score, the chance of success gradually decreases. So this is the most recent score, which is come in a Euro CTO study, and they've used the CASL score. This has an acronym. CASPLE stands for 5 items, which is CABG history. If the patient has had a CABG, it's 1, because they say that the CTOs in CABG are much harder to perform in a native vessel than if they have not been grafted. Age is more than 70. Stump again blunt or invisible, tortuosity, length of occlusion being more, extent of calcification. As we can see, there is some similarities, and they have EuroCTO looked at procedural success, as we can see here. So this is a very interesting picture which I've come across in one of the articles by Brilakis. So this sums up the CTO scores and also the things which are common, and one can confer that all these mentioned in these Venn diagrams are the harbingers of a CTO failure or a technical difficulty during a CTO. So as we've already seen, JCTO has this previous attempt to open a CTO alongside calcification and lesion length, and also tortuosity and proximal cap. Proximal cap, as we can see, is there a part of all these, and that is the most important thing among all the scores. And progress CTO has a target vessel and also a collateral quality, and CASL, as we know, has CABG and age as an extra point. So, like I've again mentioned,
here that CTO, this one tortuosity refers to tortuosity of the CTO segment, right?
CTO segment, yeah. Like I mentioned, though this seems like a cumbersome process, the more time we spend on reviewing the angiogram and actually meticulously calculating this course, the more we will pay attention to what has, what has failed when people have tried before, and also increase our chance of success. So what is the role of CT? So the role of CT is basically, like I mentioned, it is preferable to be done usually in all cases, ideally, but as in a resource constraint setting, it might be difficult. So better outcomes and lesser procedure time has been found with CT. And especially in post-CABG interventions and a failed reattempt, and when there are no adequate collaterals, it would be mandatory to do a CT scan before performing a procedure as such after the CAG. So what do we look at? We look at the lesion length, we look at calcification and remodeling, and the quality and also the caliber of distal vessel is also seen. So according to the cross-sectional calcification, they have given these scores, which, there is a description called as a crescent, full moon, circular, half and half moon. These are all basically names given to descriptions which are self-explanatory, as we can see. And as one could understand, the full moon type of calcification is the worst and has the highest chance of failure, and would mandate requirement of an antegrade dissection or a retrograde dissection instead of a through the lesion kind of an approach. There are a lot of CT scores also which predict the procedural success, which I'm not going to go into. CT Rector and KCCT scores are the scores which have been approved for grading of success prior to attempting a CTO instrumentation. So summing up the angiogram findings, what would tell us which are favorable and what is unfavorable? So favorable we will see. So if there is a tapered stump, as we have saw, and also if it is a functional occlusion. So what is a functional occlusion? Is what was previously thought as a TIMI-1 flow, which is there is an occlusion, but there is a small channel which we can see like a trickle of blood flow. So that's a functional occlusion. And also if the pre or post branch occlusion. So as we can see here, if it is not flush starting from the branch side entry, and also if there are no bridging collaterals. These four would confer a favorable anatomy with respect to a CTO. What is unfavorable is, as we can see here, blunted stump, both in the terms of main branch and also side branch, as we can see here, because the wire would always enter into the side branch here and never enter the side branch here. If it is a complete total occlusion, it is again an unfavorable. Bridging collaterals, they found that if you have bridging collaterals, especially when we do a subintimal tracking across this CTO, it would always enter the collateral vessels and cause high risk of perforation, because there would be a channel into the vessel. So bridging collaterals presence itself is a independent predictor of perforation at the end of procedure or during the procedure. So after seeing what we need to look at in the angiogram, we will now come to the hardware. This is the most important part of CTO, understanding hardware and what all we have in our arsenal and what we can use. So starting up with guide wire. So what are the parts of guide wire, just to brush up our what we already know? I'm sorry. What are the parts of guide wire? So guide wire has a central core and a distal tip, covering and coating. These are two different things I want you to pay attention to. Covering and coating is not the same. So it is evident in this picture. Yeah. So this is the core of a guide wire. So core of the guide wire is usually made up of a stainless steel or a metal substance, which is usually stiff and it tapers in the end. So depending on how rapidly it tapers or how how much till the end the stiff part comes in, the strength and the pushability of the guide wire depends upon them. And we can see this blue substance inside. I'm sure you'll be able to see this. So that is basically the polymer cover on the guide wire. So the polymer cover is basically a layer instead of the spring coils. As we can see here we can see this is a polymer cover which is there. It can be either a partial polymer cover, or it can be a no polymer cover or complete polymer cover kind of wires. We will see each examples. And there is a spring coil for its trackability at the tip of the guide wire. And there are two types of design where you can see that the guide wire core may come all the way to the tip. So that is called as a core to tip kind of a design. Or you can have a shaping ribbon. So where the core does not reach the tip and there is a shaping ribbon. This is to give it a primary curvature, and especially to maintain the primary curvature, they have this shaping ribbon which is present in the distal part. So which is what is actually explained here in this right upper inset. So what is a coating? Coatings which the wire can have are hydrophilic or hydrophobic, as one can understand. So hydrophilic coating can be present with or without the polymer coating. That's why I told you covering and coating are two different things. So why do we give hydrophilic coatings? Hydrophilic coatings will attract water and make it slimy. So, and basically they become gel-like and the friction becomes less. So lubricity is increased with hydrophilic coating. We will come to these definitions of lubricity and those kind of terms which are to be known in terms of CTO. And opposite of it is hydrophobic. Hydrophobic will repel water. So they give either a Teflon or a silicone wax-like surface. So if you have a hydrophobic coating with Teflon, then it would be less slippery. At the same time, it has less trackability. So that is the importance of it. So this graph kind of picture is very important. So as we increase, if you have a polymer covered with a hydrophilic coating, then it has a very less tactile response because it will be very slippery and it would not exactly give us the tip, the finger feeling of the tactile response would not be accurate, as one can understand. So then exclude the polymer coating and have only the hydrophilic coating. Then you have a little more of a tactile response with decrease in lubricity. Now, if you have a hydrophobic coating without a hydrophilic coating, you have more tactile response. Hydrophobic coating with Teflon has even more, and a non-coated wire has the most tactile response, but as one can understand, it is least trackable. So one to tell in to put things in practical perspective, if we have a track and we already see where the track is, and we just need something to snuggle in and go into the track, then one would want to use this kind of a polymer coated with a hydrophilic coating, because tracking is very important there. However, if you have a blunt end and we can't see the track, and we need to feel exactly what the tip is actually butting against, then we need to go to this end of the spectrum where tactile response becomes very important in CTO. So these are the workhorse kind of wires in CTO. And in this left inset here in the graph column are the usual names of CTO wires. Let's get familiar with this. We will see this green and yellow first. So green is the regular wires which we use in the cath lab, which is Fielder XT. Fielder XT is the normal wire, and Fielder XT R and A have increase in coating, increase in the tip load. So they are used for CTO purposes to begin with. And Gaia has 3 wires, one in the low penetration, intermediate, and high penetration. This is basically the tip stiffness, and what is written in number here, numerical number, is the tip load. So as the load increases, the stiffness increases. So that is what we need to understand. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the penetrability will increase, because as we will see, a few of these wires are tapered and few of them are not. So the tapered ones are the ones with the highest penetrable power. For example, Conquest Pro 12 has a tapered tip design, which has a very high penetration power. But as one can understand, it is very poor trackability. So here we have color labeled it into green, hard plaque as purple, and severe calcification as yellow. And so is this picture. So if you have a communication, like I have mentioned, communication which is already seen, especially with a tapered proximal cap like this, then we can go for this green set of wires. Gaia is easy to remember because penetrable power is more with Gaia 3, and Gaia second has lesser, and Gaia first is the starter wire. So for the green kind of lesions where you have a simple lesion for anti-grade technique, you can use Fielder XT A and R and Gaia 1 or first. For the intermediate kind of lesions which do not fall between this and this, we can use a Gaia 2 or basically a Pilot 200 and Miracle group of wires. And Conquest, one should remember, has a tapered tip design, and it is specifically used for penetrating a calcific proximal clap. We will see these techniques, and also so I mentioned it here.
Dimpu, that whatever is written in the top, that is stiffness or that is tip load? Whatever is written in the
tip
top.
Load, tip load.
Tip load. In terms of milligrams or grams, something is there? No, what is that?
Yeah,
milligrams.
it's gram. This is gram. Yeah. This is tip load in grams. This will be tip load. Okay. So I have written this. I have left this master table here, which we will understand better once we finish off the techniques and then come back to this. So I have put it in the end also. Anyways, just for familiarizing ourselves, these are the, so like I mentioned, Fielder XT is a starter wire, and it can be used when there is a micro channel which is visualized. And dissection and re-entry, we usually use Stingray wire or a Pilot 200 again, and for external. So these won't make much sense now. So we will come back to this picture. I just want you to make note that there is this tip. So the diameter here, it is mentioned. See, for direct penetration, this alone we can focus now. So for direct penetration, we usually used a tapered guide wires. So the guide wires with the tapered tip have the highest amount of penetration power. That is what we need to know right now. So some terms with respect to this.
Conquest Pro and Confianza is same, huh?
Confianza Pro? No. Confianza,
because
they're
in this
different.
table, Conquest is not there.
I think
in this entire table, Conquest is not there.
No, Conquest and Confianza, I think, are the same, because they usually are. Even Conquest is Asahi family. I'll just
because that also is coming in 12 grams. That is the highest tip load.
I think they're the same. Yeah,
they are same.
Conquest Pro is different, if I'm not. Anyway.
Okay, maybe I'll check on that. Okay.
Dimpu, this
so what we need to
load,
remember? Huh? Someone else asking something.
The higher the tip load, more will be the penetration, right?
No, it's not like that actually, because In fact, 1 second. Basically, this tip load is the stiffness. Penetration will depend on the force per tip load is the force. Penetration power is equal to force per area. So once you decrease the area, the penetration power increases. So that is why the tapered tip design, which is there only in few of these, will actually have
more penetration.
Penetration power. I will show you that. I had one more picture I should have added to that. I will show you that in the end. Actually,
Okay.
So just remember now that the tapered tip design of the guide wire is available only in few of these things, like where Confianza or Conquest has the tapered tip design, and that is used for penetration. Let's say you have a proximal cap which is not amenable to any kind of a thing, very fibrous, thick. So to penetrate that, we need to use these kind of a high penetrability power wires.
Yeah, I checked the Confianza and Conquest Pro are same.
Okay, must be both are Asahi family only.
Yeah.
So few terms, these are all interchangeably used generally in our cath lab, but then what we need to know is the exact definition of this. So penetrability is ability to puncture the lesion. So as I told, tapered tip will give it more penetrable power. Tip load also matters, and also the wire should not buckle, so the lateral support is important. And if one should use any accessory support of microcatheter, then the penetrability will increase. So what is pushability? Pushability is amount of force needed to advance the wire after penetration. So after penetration along the loose tissue, we will see something called as a loose tissue tracking. So after penetration, during the loose tissue tracking, the pushability of the wire comes into play. Then trackability is the ability of the device to track over a guide wire. So trackability can also be used, they say, for a guide wire itself to track through a channel, or if the guide wire is in place for the device, if you are using this term for a device, as we will see the microcatheters, the device for it to be able to track over the guide wire is trackability. Torqueability is transmission, 1:1 transmission of the turning and bending of it, which is very important for drilling technique, as we will see in this picture below. Steerability is ability and responsiveness of the wire tip to navigate the vessels as we turn. Lubricity, as one can understand from its term, is ease of passage. So for the proximal cap penetration, there are 3 techniques which are used usually. So we will see one by one. So as we understand here, the 3 terms are drilling, penetrating technique, and sliding technique. So they are not exactly the same, but one need to understand this. So for drilling technique, concentrate on this rotation. So we use a rotation of 180 degree, 90 to 180 degrees. So there is a lot of rotation, and also anterior advancement with force after the rotation. So as we can understand, the drilling technique will create a distal cap as it goes. The importance of this cap I will come to in subsequent pictures. So if you have a semi-hard proximal cap, then you can use intermediate guide wires like a Miracle family or Pilot 200 for drilling technique. And as I have told you in the previous paper, in the previous picture, that this primary curve here is very important. And if you have a shaping ribbon, it will let you keep the shape as you course through this hard material for drilling technique. What is penetration? Penetration is lesser rotation and more anti-grade force, where you have a harder and heavy resistant lesion. So Conquest Pro, as we can understand, it has more penetrability, and there will be lesser rotation which we use. So it is more dependent on pushing it. So sliding technique is if you are able to see a micro channel, so for here, as I mentioned already, Fielder XT or a very basic wire with the highest hydrophilicity and polymer coated lubricity will go through this. And so we need to, for subtotal occlusions, this kind of technique is very useful. So sliding technique is basically going along the channel which is already there. So what do we do after penetration? This is some term which we need to know. It is called as loose tissue tracking. It is nothing but a fancy term used for just going along how the body of the CTO is. So once we penetrate the cap, then here they have given the 1, 2, 3 here. So the 1 is the control, the force which we are using anti-gradely, and 2, which they have given, is the resistance of the loose tissue offered, which is here, and 3 is in the plaque. So the So the concept is that the force which we are giving antigradely should be somewhere in between the resistance offered by this and the resistance offered by this, because if we give too much force, then it has a high chance of actually losing this loose tracking, and it will go into this subintimal space. So that is why for loose tracking, antigrade loose tracking, once the penetration is done, we need to use a wire which gives a very good tactile response for us to be able to know where we are. So as I mentioned in the drilling technique, why is the distal cap, the formation of distal cap important? As you can see here, so what happens if you use just a penetration kind of a technique? So you might be as close to the distal true lumen as we are seeing here. However, you can actually, if you don't use the correct amount of force, you can go in subintimally and not be able to enter the distal true lumen, because one should understand that we're all doing a blind procedure here. So what they say is, if you have a distal cap which has been formed because of your rotation drilling technique, the cap will kind of pinpoint this direction where the thing has to go by creating more space, and the point of the least resistance will give in, and it will has a higher chance of entering into distal true lumen. So that's the importance of creating a cap as we go. So they say that the feeling from fingertip is of paramount importance when we are dealing with this. So what we need to do is, while we are in the body, what we need to, if you can have these kind of feels. So grasp could be that if it is in a high resistant lesion, and if it might be stuck if it is in subintimal lesion, or if there is high resistance, it could be in a false lumen. So what is more important is that when you are removing the wire, when you think you have gone into the wrong space, when you are pulling it back, the feel of the wire from the fingertip is very important, because if there is a free movement of the wire when it is actually exiting, then it could be that it has gone into a extravascular space, or also it is basically inside the true lumen. So one of these feels, it can be either when you remove it, or if you think you have entered, like if you feel a give, either of these two things at the fingertip will tell us it is either in the true lumen or in the extravascular space following a perforation, which we need to be aware about. So after dealing with the guide wires, we come to the next important topic with CTO, which is microcatheter. So what is the role of microcatheter? Microcatheters are very strong backup support. They reinforce torque transmission because they transmit it all the way up there, and easy wire exchange is facilitated because, as we can see, for penetration we need a different kind of wire. For loose anterior tracking, loose tissue tracking, we need a different kind of wire. And one more thing I forgot mentioning here is the distal cap. If we find it very hard, sometimes as I mentioned before, we enter the true lumen, again we might need to upscale the wire, leaving in a microcatheter in this channel to something with more penetrable power, as one can understand. So in that case, the microcatheter will allow us for an easy wire exchange, and we can also, in collaterals, we can do a selective angiography. And also sometimes when we're coming from the left side, I mean from a collateral and route, the septal channel dilation, as Asahi Corsair catheter is mainly used for that. So the channels can be small to begin with, and once we use the microcatheter, they will grow in size. So that kind of a purpose also is served by microcatheter. So the first and most widely used is Corsair. Corsair is initially developed only for the retrograde approach, but now it is available for antigrade approach also. So it is, this is a picture of a Corsair catheter. So essentially we are talking about what we use after we have wired the lesion. So sometimes, so what is the importance of these microcatheters mainly is for all these purposes. And also after wire, sometimes these will also help enable for an easy balloon passage, because sometimes the wire goes, but the balloon doesn't go. So for those kind of situations also. So it has a tapered tip, and it is available in two lengths. For antigrade approach, we use 135 centimeters and 150 centimeters for retrograde approach. It doesn't have too much of a tensile strength and can get stuck. So not to be used in a very calcified lesion, they say. And the optimal way of using it is 8 times clockwise and then 8 times anti-clockwise to not leave too much of a torque in the body of this. And the other kind of, I'll mention it in brief about these, that so the second catheter, again, all these are from Japan only. So Asahi, Termo. So this is again from Japan, Tokyo, Japan, fine cross. So this has the smallest profile. So if you have a smallish looking channel, then fine cross would be better. As the name suggests, it has a very fine body, and it has distal 13 centimeters is made up of an ultra flexible material. So it has excellent trackability, and it has a stainless steel braided shaft. As one can see here, this is a braided stainless steel shaft, and it has a marker at the tip of it for us to know where it is on the wire. The other less used ones are Crusade. Crusade is basically a guide wire with 2 lumen, where it can actually, so as we can see here, you can use it to wire the side branch using the same micro catheter, and also use it for penetration of the CTO. This is a benefit of using a Crusade catheter. So sometimes after very resistant lesions, we can use a Tornus. Tornus is also again from Asahi. Asahi wire with Tornus is basically, it is a stainless steel braid, and it has a very high crossing profile and a very high tensile strength. So in resistant lesions, they have used even Tornus, and it is specifically given the term crossing catheter. The other all used micro catheters are Caravelle catheter, which is similar to Corsair in its profile, again from Asahi company. So before we come to this, I'll just talk to you about 2 more important recent updates in this hardware, which we need to know is Crossboss and Stingray system. Both of these are actually very easily available in Europe, but not so much very expensive and available in India. The Crossboss catheter itself costs 1,45,000, and Stingray also is very limited use. So, but nonetheless, we need to know because they are game changers in CTO field. So, Crossboss has a torqueable device with a racketing torque device, which enables a very fast spin. That is what is important, and it has a blunt profile at the end of it with a steel core. So, the reason why it is so successful is that it's specifically has been found. Crossboss has specifically been found to be very successful in trying to antegradely recanalize instant restenosis, because it has a very high chance of going subintimally. So if you have a stent scaffolding, it has a very high crossing rates. So we will see that. And Stingray also we will see. So just to familiarize ourselves with the hardware of Stingray, as one can understand, this looks like a Stingray. That is why it's called a Stingray. It is a blunt end. There is no opening at the end. However, there are 2 holes. Each one is 180 degrees. So this is a cross-sectional surface, and the guide wire comes this way. So as we can see here, the guide wire will come either this way, or it can go through this into this way. So they are 180 degrees apart. Exactly opposite. And they have a specific guide wire which comes in this, which is called as a Stingray wire. So it is also called as a Sting. So this has a tip angle of 28 degrees just to enable its entry out of this 2 ports which they have given at the end of it. We'll see how it is used. So before we come to this kind of a sophisticated equipment, we need to understand what are the techniques which are routinely used when trying to cross. This is more like all of us know these techniques in trying to cannulate a difficult lesion in our angiograms. So either you can send a wire alongside the lesion all the way down as a buddy wire, so it will have a higher chance of crossing, or you can use a balloon anchor technique, or you can even use a distal anchoring of the balloon to give more access support to the guide wire. So one thing which is important is trapping. So what is the concept of trapping is that the micro catheters which are used to cross the CTO, should you want to remove them without losing the access. So one should be aware of this thing, that micro catheter gets very tightly adhered to the wire, and also like they have an almost similar profile as the wire, a little bigger than the wire. So they're quite they're quite tightly adherent to the wire after they mix with the blood. So while removing this, it would be very important after all the hard work to not lose the access into the CTO. So what we do is something called as a trapping when we are trying to remove the microcatheter. So the trapping involves us to pull back the microcatheter into the guide wire, and we pass another wire, another balloon distal to this microcatheter to be parking it distal to where the microcatheter is. Then we trap it with the balloon inflated and then take out the wire. So as one can understand, this is essentially to just remove or use another microcatheter or use another device. Like if you have used a guide liner or a Corsair and it has not worked, if you want to use another one, always while exchanging the microcatheter, performing a trapping has a higher chance of not losing the axis. So this is this is basically crossbars and Stingray system. So what is done is once we have this, this is essentially used for what is called as subintimal tracking and re-entry. We will come to that. So the crossbars and Stingray are usually used together. So crossbars is a blind thing. It doesn't need the wire to be sent. So it can be sent as it is with rotating technique. So we can advance the crossbars into the subintimal space, as we can see here. And now you can understand why it has a specific role in instant restenosis, because if it can actually perforate and go this way also, if it is a bad vessel, bad calcification. So once we have parked it in the subintimal space, then we send the Stingray balloon. And with the Stingray balloon, once we inflate the Stingray balloon, then we pass the wire through it, which comes out and re-enters the distal lumen. And thereafter, we remove the Stingray balloon, and then we perform the procedure as an antegrade dissection followed by re-entry. It is called as an ADR technique. So some technology.
So crossbars can be passed without guide wire.
Yeah.
Okay. It will.
It just needs the guide wire. It just needs the guide wire to take it all the way there, but it doesn't need to go on the guide wire to go into the subintimal location.
Okay. Till here we have to use the guide wire, and afterwards we can push it.
Yeah. Till here, till bringing it here, but crossbars can be advanced without the guide wire. So can be Tornus, they say. So that is the advantage of crossbars. So you can easily get into the subintimal space without much of an imaging guidance. So it is specifically made for that.
You said crossbars is a rotating device. Does it rotate, or you have to push it only?
No, you go in with a rotating motion, with a very high spin, fast rotating motion.
Okay, manual rotation even. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're saying something, Lokesh?
No. Okay. Go.
So, few technological terms we need to remember is star, last, and one more thing is AWE, antegrade wire escalation. So I just wanted to, so subintimal tracking and re-entry, we already saw a form of it. So this is called as a stick and drive. So basically when you start with subintimal space and you go in, it is not, it is called as stick and drive. These are just names given to this. It's called direct puncture or stick and drive. And this is called as stick and swap. So what is important of this? Importance of this is that here we start with the center within the lesion CTO, then come into the subintimal space, and to re-enter into this, we don't. To re-enter into the distal lumen, we use the Stingray catheter. So this guide wire which is coming out is actually the Stingray one, which is actually a very hard steel, and which cannot be used for completing the rest of the procedure. So we swap it with our routine workhorse wire. So which is why it is called as a stick and swap technique. So these are the two ways we can use this subintimal tracking and re-entry technique. So why have they come up with this? I just wanted to show this picture, which is interesting. So this is how it would actually look in the specimen, where the crossing catheter is just subinterstitial. So in this study, they have found that this is in the physiology article. So adventitious layer, because of its elasticity, is on average at least 3 times tensile, has a tensile strength than the relative media and intima. So even in the radial direction or in the longitudinal direction, it has very high tensile strength, and it is not very easy for us to perforate an adventitia of the CTO segment, they say. So it will usually go back into the intima, or it will track to a significant distance till we re-enter and subintimally, which is what was the basis for this. So another thing which we need to know, similar to the star, is last. Last stands for limited antegrade.
That side port, it will be in line with the catheter, or it will be separate here?
No, see this is a side port, right?
Which one?
This see, if you're not understanding this, there's a video I think we can watch it in the end actually regarding Stingray. Okay, because there is a it is a flat thing, so it will
this is in line. This is in line. The next figure.
Yes, so there will be a side port here, and there will be a side port distally. So there will be a one proximally, one distally, one on the proximal end, one is the distal end. Both of them are 180 degrees apart. As in, like if the guide wire comes like this, it will enter out this way, or it can, if you just pull it back and push it further, then it has to come towards the lumen only.
Okay.
So, which is why we need to do under vision. When you're coming out, you have to be careful that it is not perforating the adventitia and going out. You have to just pull it out, and then it will, the distal one is usually into the lumen, facing the lumen, and the proximal one is facing out. So the reason why they have given this lumen is for you to facilitate it to go as subintimally, if you want, should you want it. So star we have seen, subintimal tracking and re-entry we have seen. Last stands for limited antigrade. So I'll just write it here. Limited antigrade subintimal tracking. So what is last is basically that, as we can see here, in star we will re-entry only after the distal part has come into the true lumen. But in last, we don't wait for it all the way to come into this. We actually have a blind entry into the lumen. And so as one can understand, this is more, this has a lesser success rate than star. So nowadays, nobody performs this other than when you are very sure, or if you have an IVS guided procedure going on. The reason is because if you have a long CTO segment, the reason is if you have a long CTO segment, then you don't want to create long dissection channel. So which is why under IVS guidance, if you should want, you will be able to do a last. So limited antigrade dissection and then go through the body of the CTO to enter into the lumen. Like basically, if there's a very hard calcium here, just to circumvent it, you can go subintimally and then re-enter back into this. That is, so then other point is bridge point entry. Bridge point entry is that here in these two, you start off with the subintimal space before the CTO starts. In bridge point re-entry, this is hardly ever done now. You start it in between the CTO to go into the subintimal space, again come back into the distal lumen. And here in these two techniques, you enter into the true lumen, but in last, we enter into the CTO back after circumventing any problem should there be one.
So in all these techniques, you will end up deploying the stent in adventitia basically.
No, basically you will have a part of adventitia where the
subintimal.
Yeah.
And this one bridge point, from where you will enter?
Enter through the body of the CTO.
Body of
into the subintimal space. Yeah.
Okay.
Adventitia or media? Subintimal is media.
Subintimal.
No, it is.
No, in CTO everything is gone. No, it is like a hard mass full.
CTO is basically eats up the adventitia. Only thing which is like separate is adventitia. Okay. So coming to hybrid strategies in CTO. So this is very important. This is where the current treatment strategies are. So there are 4. One is antigrade dissection and re-entry, which we have seen ADR. Otherwise, it is antigrade wire escalation and retrograde wire escalation and retrograde dissection and re-entry. So these are the 4 basic principles on which CTO works.
Oh, presume that 10 is 0.
Hello?
Seriously, I'm not joking.
Gaurav, can you mute yourself?
Gaurav.
Okay.
It's okay. He stopped. You guys carry on.
Antigrade wire escalation. Antigrade wire escalation is basically, as one can understand, first we start off with a low penetration force wire, and if it doesn't go, then we go to the intermediate penetration wire. So then going along the CTO body and distal cap. So if there is a visible channel, this we have already seen. So if there is a polymer jacket, and so we use a one with very good lubricity. If that doesn't go, then we use an intermediate penetration force. So if it is a tapered, also we use a low penetration because these two have a high chance of being able to complete the penetration. But if it is a blunt proximal cap where there is no tapering or no visible channel, then we have to start with an intermediate penetration force wire and then go to a Confianza Pro or Conquest Pro if the intermediate fails. So this is about the proximal cap entry. Then body of the CTO, usually if the high penetration force has been used to puncture, then it is good to step down, because it will cause an unambiguous force and it will go into basically it will cause perforation. So distal cap, again, if the distal cap is fibrous, you have to escalate from the softer wires to ones with a better tip load. So there are two techniques for anti-grade wire escalation. One while during the course of it. So one is a parallel wire technique. Other one is a seesaw technique. Both are similar, except that the number of microcatheters used are different. So in parallel wire technique, you will go park a wire in the subintimal space, and you come back with a microcatheter with another wire, which will enable you to actually go through the correct channel now and enter the distal space. So here we use only one single microcatheter. Initially, we use it for the one which we have parked it in the subintimal space, and then we come back with another wire where the microcatheter is, which holds the microcatheter. In seesaw technique, the similar thing, but we do not take out the initial microcatheter. We come back with a second microcatheter. As one can understand, this will require a very big guide wire to be able to accommodate two microcatheters. So what we use generally is parallel wire technique, and they say that if the parallel wire technique fails, for some reason, the seesaw technique has a higher chance of success. So it can be tried before we change the wire itself. So coming to retrograde approach, two things which we need to know are one is CART. CART stands for Controlled Antigrade and Retrograde Tracking, CART. That's what it stands for. So initially, they have developed CART, but now what we regularly use is a retrograde CART. So what is CART? CART is basically I'm going to mention only about retrograde techniques in this page. So we have two wires, the other one entering through the retrograde system here, as one can understand. So the proximal one comes and is in the subintimal space. The retrograde wire is also in subintimal space. So to make this proximal come into the true lumen, we create space for that. So by employing a retrograde balloon, once the balloon is inflated, the space is created, and then it enables this wire to enter into the true lumen, distal true lumen. So this is CART technique. So reverse CART is exactly opposite. As one can understand, for this balloon to reach here, it has to come through the retrograde channel. So sometimes it can be a challenge. You may be able to pass a wire, but you may not be able to pass balloon all the way to reach here just to enable this entry here. So what is more commonly performed is reverse CART. So reverse CART is exactly the same procedure done through the ballooning is done through the proximal antigrade approach. So we come through the antigrade and retrograde, leave them in the subintimal space. The ballooning is done in the antigrade channel, and the retrograde wire is taken out through the antigrade, exteriorized through the antigrade channel. So that is reverse CART. So these are advanced techniques, CART and reverse CART, and these are subintimal techniques, as we can understand. So these should be only tried if these two fail. So the routine way of actually enabling these two to meet is what is called as retrograde wire crossing technique, which is nothing but ballooning the balloon can be through the proximal or distal. So it goes through it doesn't go subintimally, and then after ballooning you take out the wire. You go antigradely, or if the antigrade wire has gone subintimally, then you can go through it, and then this is called as kissing wire technique, where you will be able to snare out the wire once we make these two wires reach. So these are just the names which we need to be familiar with. So retrograde wire crossing and kissing wire, these are usually the two techniques which are done, failing which we resort to CART. CART uses balloon. If you use it in the retrograde fashion, it's called CART, and if you use it in the antigrade fashion, it's called as reverse CART.
So in all these techniques, you have to snare the wire when you're going.
The procedure is usually, that's what I'll come to that. The procedure is usually done after exteriorizing the wire. So what we can do is that what we usually do is you'll have to take this retrograde wire out through the antigrade guide and then exteriorize it, and the stent has to come on that.
Okay, yeah.
Externalizing the wire is important. You need to create a channel basically. So you usually do it because reverse CART is more common. You will take out the retrograde wire through the antigrade guide catheter, and then you use the stent on it. So when we use the retrograde,
then because you need snaring, these wires will be very long, maybe 300.
The externalizing wires, like I told you here, this RG33 actually, sorry, RG3, these externalizing wires are specifically used for that. Once you created a channel, so we use one of these externalizing wire where they are extremely long. They are 350 centimeters.
Oh, okay.
So coming to the collateral channels used in retrograde techniques, so bypass graft is least preferred because it has a lot of frailty, tortuosity, and difficulty in wiring. So one needs to remember that the tortuosity is more in epicardial and least in bypass graft. But then because of the wiring, because of high chance of tamponade, it is less preferred over the septal because septal is kind of guarded in the septum. That is why the perforation is lesser. So most commonly used is septal, but then next preferred is bypass. Only last option is to use an epicardial vessel because they are very difficult to wire and they can have a high chance of perforation. So what to do after deploying the stent in a retrograde technique? So here we have gone through the microcatheter has come through the retrograde channel and the retrograde wire has been exteriorized through the antegrade guide. So with this in place, now the stenting is done. So what we do is we first push the microcatheter to not lose the axis. So we push the retrograde microcatheter to enter this antegrade wire. Antegrade catheter. And with the microcatheter across the stent, then we disengage both these guides at the same time. And then what we do is we leave the microcatheter here, and then we will pull out the wire from the retrograde retrograde guide, and then we can take it out at the same time. So these techniques, this is routinely followed in all the places. So the point important here is that the microcatheter should be in place because when you're removing the wire, sometimes we can suddenly lose the axis. So microcatheter, if it is in place, we'll be able to go across it easily. So coming to algorithm, how to now that we have learned all the techniques. So what is called as hybrid algorithm. So this is from here, it will be easy for you to understand. So what we do in a hybrid algorithm is dual injection. First, we do a dual injection, like I mentioned, using those 4 cautionary things. So if there is an ambiguous proximal cap, if there is a poor distal target, or if there are appropriate intervening collaterals, if all these 3 are present, then we choose a retrograde approach. So in the retrograde, we can use various techniques, as I mentioned. If none of these are there, then we can proceed with antegrade approach. And if the lesion length is less than 20, then we can just go with antegrade wiring and antegrade wire escalation. But if the lesion length is more than 20, as I have mentioned, if for long lesions, it will be difficult to be successful with just wire escalation. So we go with dissection and re-entry. We can do it either with a controlled fashion using a Stingray system, or we can. So the important point is to switch this strategy in between these retrograde and antegrade approaches, not crossing over too much time. So then for this was what was proposed by Brilakis et al. In European CTO club initially. So, but then in 2019, Asia Pacific system came with a new algorithm. The basis for this new algorithm is that we don't have Stingray very easily available in all the labs, and the Asian Pacific group felt that they have had a significant success with just antegrade wire escalation. So they give more importance to going antegrade. So what they say is, you first carefully analyze the angiogram. If it is an ISR, like I mentioned, if ISR, then you can use crossbus, because crossbus has very high chances of antegrade successful crossing with instant restenosis. But if it is not an ISR, then you look at proximal cap ambiguity. If you have an ambiguous proximal cap, then you use IVUS, like Varun was saying. I'll come to that picture. So if you have a side branch which is very nearby, we can use IVUS guided entry into the, instead of blindly poking it. If there is no ambiguity, then you can actually, so IVUS guided re-entry, then you can go. So if there is no proximal cap ambiguity, and if there is a poor distal vessel or bifurcation at the distal cap, these 2 are again markers of failure. So then you can go through retrograde approach. Intervention collaterals, if they are present, you can go through retrograde. But if these poor markers are not there, then you choose antegrade based approach. In this, you can do parallel wiring, or you can do something called as knuckle wiring. So they say that if antegrade wiring approach, if performed well, will not require this dissection and re-entry in 80% of the times is what they have mentioned. And so they have KWT stands for knuckle wire technique. So if there is an ambiguous course or a heavy calcification and tortuosity, you can use a knuckling of the wire. And if there is a length of CTO which is high also, we can use knuckle wire. So knuckle wire is basically to go along the CTO body, or it can also be used for dissecting and going through the subintimal space. So this is very important, the last one. You should stop if the CTO procedure length has crossed more than 3 hours, or if more than 3.7 EGFR has been, contrast has been used, or air kerma, as we have seen in Darshan's thing, the air kerma is exposure. If it is greater than 6 gray, unless you have been very well advanced into the procedure. So they have given specific criteria to stop, where to draw the line of start. So let's say if you have actually done all this and you at the end of it you have stopped to re-intervene a few days later, that procedure is named as an investment procedure, just to be aware of that term. That's all. So this is a picture of IVUS, as I told you. So the important thing to note is that IVUS usually the standard IVUS will have the sensor which is quite behind the tip. So in CTO techniques, you need to use the short tip IVUS catheter, which comes with the Volcano machine, and also we can we can ask for it. So short tip is what is preferred, and the short tip is placed in the side branch, and when it is in the side branch, you will be able to see where we are entering with this wire. So this is just an example of that. So where we can see that this is here there's an angiogram which is showing an LAD which is cut off, and there is a ramus which is going down. Alongside along the ramus, they have actually placed the IVUS catheter, and we can see the lumen of LAD here. And the initial wire which was placed, the lumen is here, so we can see that it is subintimal in position, and later it is corrected to intimal position. So this is how IVUS will help. So again, in the case of difficult cases, we can use even rotablator or even laser. So what is, after doing all this, what is the technical success definition? So usually we use angiographic success as less than 10% of residual lesion for normal PCA. But for this, we use less than 30% residual lesion, or TIMI-3 flow is technical success. Procedural success is technical success with no complications. So what is the rationale in doing PCA, in CTO PCA? So in open CTO registry, we have seen that the scores of anginal frequency, physical limitation, quality of life, and all these will significantly improve. And also, it is a very common notation to say that it is a very well collateralized vessel. So leave it. It is already well collateralized, naturally collateralized. Why do you want to do a PCA? So for that kind of a scenario, Werner et al., who has described the collaterals, has actually done FFR after being able to successfully cross the CTO. So to find that these FFR collaterals, which after, before doing the PCA, just after wire crossing, when they have done the collaterals, we can see here that FFR mostly is in the mean of 0.3 to 0.4, which means that no matter how well the collaterals look, they are not enough to be able to supply adequate part of blood supply. So definitely there is improvement in ischemia by opening up a CTO in a correct given scenario. And in one study where they have done in as a secondary prevention ICD, they found that CTO is an independent marker of appropriate ICD therapy, which means that also they have seen that survival was better with revascularization of CTO in this particular study, especially in patients who were on secondary prevention ICD. So there are multiple trials. I'm not going to go through, but this picture has summed it up very nicely. It is given in this recent EuroCTO guidelines. So Explore, EuroCTO, and Impactor CTO, and Decision CTO, which I mentioned, are the major 4 trials which have been run with CTO. So there are, first thing at the outset, I have to tell you that all the randomized trials have been randomized to be able to look at the outcomes whichever they have hypothesized with adequate power. However, because it is very difficult to randomize the CTO patients, because the procedure might not succeed, procedure might fail, and also the thing which you have randomized may not be successful PCA, and the slow recruitment, none of the studies till now have reached their target population, and they had to be all had to be stopped prematurely. So out of the trials which are there, Euro CTO and Impactor CTO have had positive results. So Euro CTO has had a very interesting methodology that they have randomized only after fixing the non-CTO lesions and making sure that only CTO was pending, and despite that they still had angina. So Euro CTO used the CASL score which we have seen, and it has 407 patients and in a stable CAD with CTO. They looked at quality of life indices, and they found that there was the mean JCTO score was 1.82, as we know what JCTO is. So they found that there was no difference in MACE, but quality of life significantly improved. And again, in this Impactor CTO, there was significant improvement in the ischemia also. But however, EF and end diastolic volume did not improve. So the most recent decision CTO which came out last year was OMT versus with or without stenting in CTO. Again, this initially planned to recruit around 1,000 odd, but ended up recruiting only 890 odd patients. And there are a lot of shortcomings. It was a negative trial to be in short. So, however, they did not look at quality of life. They looked at only MACE. And MACE, as we all know, there is no difference. And non-CTO revascularization, as it was done in Euro CTO, was not done. So we do not know if non-CTO revascularization not being done was making it biased towards not being able to detect the difference. And the sample was less, so the power was under. And nearly 20% of no CTO arm crossed over into PCI arm based on their symptoms. So currently, because of the methodology, decision CTO stands like a hypothesis generating, but then we cannot take the face value of the results. And again, baseline symptoms were very mild or even absent. So because they were looking at MACE, they did not concentrate on baseline symptoms because they were not looking of any symptom decrease. So as what Gaurav was asking, currently where do we stand? We stand in the fact that if patients are affected by CTO, if there are symptoms, and if we are able to demonstrate viability, and if the hypokinesia is in the CTO territory, if there is symptom, you can go for revascularization. If they are not symptomatic, and if there is hypokinesia, if the ischemia burden is more than 10, then we are justified in revascularizing. So this is similar. 2019 European algorithm has also been published. This is similar to our Asia Pacific algorithm, so I'll not go into this. This is just for reference I have kept here. So the ongoing Noble CTO and ischemia CTO trials will give us more insight into the actual MACE. So one thing which a lot of CTO speakers say is that, see, if you are operating a person for disability, let's say you are doing a knee surgery, you're not going to assess whether you have saved life by doing a knee replacement. You're going to give that person a very good quality of life with the knee you have replaced. So assessing mortality benefit with PCI of CTO is actually not a correct outcome, is what a lot of CTO operators say. So keeping that in mind, coming to complications, this is also important. Complications can be cardiac, non-cardiac, and mainly, yeah.
This thing, once this Rangaraj sir had asked, what is the basically magnitude of stenosis equivalent for a patient who has a CTO? Like I am asking, you understood the question. Like if a patient has a CTO, okay, and he is having stable CAD or something, and another person who has a stenosis, presuming 70, 80, 90%. So, sir was like, what is the this thing magnitude of stenosis which is equivalent for a CTO? Like 80% will be equal to a CTO or something like that. He was asking. Is this given somewhere?
No, not that I came across, Gaurav.
I think you can probably assume that FFR less than 0.8 would be equivalent.
It's in the collateral flow.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, like that. Okay.
Stenosis
With the
maybe
collaterals,
physiologically.
okay.
Yeah, we can say.
Okay. With the collaterals, maybe, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because sir was like on angio, if you find a 80% lesion, will you consider it equivalent to a CT or something like
nothing
that?
See, basically, like I said, after all these, extensive guidelines which are there, I didn't come across this specifically. Presence of collaterals doesn't mean much, is what I have understood from all these things. So you still need to assess viability, and you still need to assess the symptoms. So if either of these things are there, then you can go for revascularization. But you are justified in revascularizing to improve the symptoms. Again, not to prevent any MACE or death. As of now, we don't have a benefit data for that yet.
Okay.
So CTO PCI complications, mainly coronary complications, which we need to focus on are stent loss or dissection and perforation. These three I will focus on. So Progress CTO again has given a scoring for predicting complications. If you have an age more than 65, if the CTO length is more than 23, if you're using retrograde approach, then your risk of complications increase. So this is just a comparison chart to show you the complications are comparable between CTO and a non-normal PCI. However, the perforation rate alone is significantly higher. So coming to the first one, dissection. Dissection can be mainly guide wire induced or guide catheter induced. Guiding catheter induced is mainly because of the most common cause of donor artery loss. So we concentrate a lot on what is happening at the CTO segment and like push and pull and tug the wire. So that time the guide can get sucked in and cause donor artery loss, which is very catastrophic, which we need to be very aware of. And so avoid forceful contrast injections if there is any CTO dissection suspected. This I think I've mentioned the earlier day. It is mentioned in Morton and Kern. The guide induced dissection can be classified as class 1, class 2, class 3. So class 1 is involving the ipsilateral cusp, and if class 2 is retrograde extension into less than 4 mm of aorta, 4 centimeters, and 3 is more than 4 centimeters of the aorta. And this is NLHBI classification, which we all are aware of. I'm not going to go into details of this. It is classified into A, B, C, D, E plus and F plus. Usually E and F have thrombus, that is why the plus status. So they will, based on this, usually if there is a spiral defect or if there is, unless there is a cutoff, we can leave it at the status quo and re-intervene a few days later, a few months later is what they say. So perforation is something which is important. So perforation, what are the risk factors of perforation? Female gender, old age is patient-related risk factor, and procedure-related are high balloon to stent ratio. They say 1 or 1.2 is the cutoff, more than which perforation is high inflation pressure, and again stiff wire, hydrophilic coated wire, cutting balloon if it is used, IVS in the false lumen. These are all device-related risk factors. This is just Ellis classification, as we all know, 1, 2, 3, and cavity spilling. So this is a pie chart of sites of perforation. As we can see, most of it is through the septal channels or the epicardial channel. So retrograde approach has a very high chance of perforation, which is what we need to understand. And in the antegrade approach, when we use CTO wiring or micro catheter advancement, is the time when the perforation is high. So what are the causes? As we can see here, one half of the pie is filled with either it is a wire in the retrograde channel or microcatheter in the retrograde channel or in the microcatheter in the antegrade channel. So we know that retrograde channel has a very high chance of perforation. So the management is, if there is a large vessel perforation, we use a covered stent. Distal vessel perforation, we can use coils or covered stent also. If the collaterals are perforated, then usually we use coils and also embolization coils, and we can reverse the heparin. So what can be used is for PTF, Joe stent is nothing but our covered stent, Graft Master. Microsphere bubbles can be used, coils can be used, and GDC coils or even detachable coils can be used. So the last complication which I'm going to talk about is stent loss. So as we can see here, what are the two main mechanisms of stent loss while doing CTO is one is when the stent is actually taken back, it gets deformed. We know this. And also while coming back from the calcific segment, the stent can get stripped off from the balloon. So when that happens, when the wire is still there, we can either try to cross the balloon across and withdraw it into the guide, or we can send a wire outside of the stent and then twist the wire and pull it back, trap and pull it back, or we can snare it into the system. So these three ways we can actually rescue ourselves from a stent. So this is just a central illustration of what I have spoken till now from the recent article in JACC on CTO. And again, so the recommendations currently with the CTO expert club are that if it's a high volume center, then you can attempt any JCTO score. If it is an intermediate volume, if they're doing more than 10 CTOs per year, then you would only use JCTO less than 2 can be attempted. And again, first 30 cases should be under a proctor. And if you are doing less than 10 CTOs, you should not attempt any CTOs. So that's the end of it. Any doubts? I think it was very fast.
These are which articles, Dimpu? They are given in circulation, huh?
Multiple places, Varshit. Actually, two main articles are Euro CTO. Basically, Euro CTO Club has given their consensus document, and also expert consensus document given in JAC.
Okay.
Okay then.
Nice one, nice compilation.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, Dimpu. Thank you, Dimpu.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
Thank you, Dimpu.
But Dimpu, what is the question asked like in our theory exam? Any idea? Hello.
I think they ask approach to CTO, na? Something.
CTO techniques was asked, and we were asked about this thing. What is it? Dissection, coronary artery perforation and management was asked. Dissection and management was asked, and this thing was asked.
Rational
Guidewires was asked.
Rational to CTO-PCA was asked recently.
Rational to CTO-PCA was also asked once. Yeah.
Okay.
This Gaurav is there, huh?
Hello, Dimpu, rational to CTO means we have to speak on
Algorithm.
Trials.
trials only again.
Trials and that, no, basically what is expected to improve, that one we need to. Gaurav, you asked for that this thing, no? I'll just show you that picture one second.
What expected to improve?
No, like you expect a quality of life has improved, and MACE has not improved. So basically summary of those 4 trials and a little bit about what are the techniques, something like that we can ask. We can.
Okay.
Dimpu,
So
this is Birla case. This book is Birla case.
No. This is not that book. This is actually one Korean book on CTO, handbook on CTO.
You have Birla case editable version?
I have the first one, not the second one.
The red cover one. Okay.
That second one is not available, the PDF.
No, I have the red cover. The recent one I have red color, but it is not editable.
Which one you are talking about, Lokesh?
Birla case. It is on CTO.
There's a manual on.
It has
CTO.
excellent diagrams. Very good diagrams.
Yeah. Correct. Hey, Gaurav. See, basically this is the penetrable power. See, you can see this is varying tip load. It's like tip load can be 4.5 for this, but because Gaia Next is actually tapering design, even with a tip load of 4, it has so much more of penetrable power.
Penetration power.
Yeah. So tip load is not the same as penetrable power, but increasing tip load will increase penetrable power. It's like that. See, like Miracle 12 has a tip load of 12, but still Conquest Pro will have more penetrable power, and Gaia Next has. So Gaia Next series is tapered design. So they have actually given Gaia 1, 2, 3 normal, and this is the tapering design with increased penetrable power. Actually.
Okay. One more thing I wanted to ask that time, I did not ask. This thing can you go to that diagram of the wire, like that microscopic picture?
Wire. Okay.
Wire. In the beginning. In
the tip of wire.
Exactly. In that, I just wanted to know this thing ribbon design wala. Only those wires we can bend for the primary curve,
No. These are basically, see, you can bend any wire because this is a tapering steel tip, but then it will take the course. But this shaping ribbon, see, like if you are in the CTO and you are turning, if you have something which will retain the shape only, it will start like carving inside the CTO, no, when you turn. So the shaping ribbon is to maintain the primary curve, like with good tensile strength. That kind of, you can understand it that way. than in a core to tip. Core to tip will basically become straight as soon as it actually encounters any resistance than a shaping ribbon.
Okay.
What
So
is the
this
first one? The blue color one? What is it?
Blue is polymer coating basically.
Okay. This is no ribbon.
Which one?
The blue one.
This one they have given is core to tip here, just as an example. This will in fact go all the way till here.
Okay, it is
But
actually
here
going
there is
to
a
tip.
definite gap with the shaping ribbon on the side. Yeah, here.
And do you have to do atherectomy always, because you are just passing a wire? How can you pass a balloon over that?
That's
How
what.
can you
See,
put a stent over that?
That's why all these micro catheters and crossing catheters come in location. Basically, once you have the wire across and the balloon across, then the plaque modification, I didn't go into detail, but usually
So, but you need to do plaque modification means.
No, usually you don't need to do any atherectomy, and basically you would have gone subintimal. If you go subintimally, they don't advise rota at all. Only if you've gone through antegrade wire escalation through the CTO, and if it is calcific, then you can do an antegrade wire escalation. And you can do a rota or laser. But nowadays, most of the centers use laser if they're not able to use this. See, they say that in a CTO also, the proximal cap and distal cap are the main barriers. The center part of the body is usually amenable for a balloon. So the challenge is about getting past these two hurdles. That's all they say.
This thing, if this intimal, like if you're going through that dissection, integrated dissection approach, then the stent which will be deployed, it will not have it won't be covering the endothelium, no? It will be a denuded stent. It won't be covering the endothelium, no? If it is going through
No, it will be partly in the false lumen. Yeah, it will be partly in the false lumen, the stent. But the thing is, the intima is no more there in the CTO segment, Varshit. So it is only the plaque and the adventitia. So you will basically plaster the plaque, or eat up the plaque using some laser or something, and then you will deploy the stent in that segment. So there is no more normal endothelium or anything there.
No, correct. No, second thing, what the question or the logic comes is, you have one patient who has a CTO, okay, and a long segment CTO, and you have say distal vessels are there, or maybe a retrograde flow is there. Now, a subset of, you will definitely choose some subset of patient who have some more than 1 year of life. By common sense, not by criteria, who has some value, like who is not in end-stage renal disease or malignancy, now compared to, and who has a refractory angina. In such subsets, whether CABG also will have the same outcome, then the CTO, which will actually take the same number of hours, and even the contrast risk is also there. So I don't know whether if there is any head-to-head comparison between CABG and CTO, that would be a more appropriate, I feel.
नहीं है वर्षित, ऐसा ट्रायल नहीं है, तो चेक करना पड़ेगा.
नहीं ऐसा नहीं है, but that's what I feel.
Logically, Varshit's point is very right thing. Like, what is the point of?
I missed Varshit's point. What was it?
It's valid. It's valid.
So no, what I feel is, if you have a CTO, okay, and you feel that okay, he's not responding to medical management and he has a refractory angina, and the patient is overall looks healthy. At least if he is healthy, then only you are going to operate him. You are not going to operate an NIH bedridden patient due to some other non-cardiac conditions. So in such case, whether a CABG, because a CTO, the procedure is long, contrast volume is more. So are you going? Is CABG more harmful than this complex procedure, or is it equivalent? That is more important. What I feel is.
You're telling with single vessel disease.
Whatever. Any disease. Okay. Yeah. That's what.
Yeah, with single vessel. I think some people do consider it, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Where is Dimpu? Dimpu did not comment on anything. His connection is lost, maybe.
He left, I think. He left.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Good night, guys.